Right now, someone weaker than you is winning. Why? Because they look more certain. They speak without hesitation. They act like they deserve everything, and the world believes them. Meanwhile, you hesitate. You overthink. You wait for the right moment, the right words, the right feeling. And as you wait, someone else takes what could have been yours. Confidence isn't a trait, it's a weapon, and if you don't carry it, someone else will use it against you. Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. The bold get ahead, even if they lack the skill. The hesitant stay behind, no matter how brilliant they are. Because power doesn't belong to the best. It belongs to the most certain. This video is a turning point, not for motivation, not for comfort, but for control. You'll learn how to erase hesitation, speak like a ruler, and move like a man who expects to be obeyed. Watch closely, because from here on, your weakness will no longer be tolerated. It will be replaced. You weren't born weak. You were made that way, by repetition, by reward, by rules. Trained to obey, trained to seek approval, trained to ask, "Is this okay?" What lives inside you right now is not a man. It's a servant, conditioned to please, programmed to submit, a loyal dog who flinches at judgment and waits for permission. That voice in your head, the one that hesitates, that overthinks, that apologizes before speaking, that's not you, that's the inner servant, and if you don't kill him, you will never be free. Machiavelli didn't whisper, he commanded. He didn't wait to be understood. He acted and let others catch up. He didn't ask for power, he seized it, because he knew those who ask don't deserve. Your transformation starts with inversion. Every time you want to shrink, expand. Every time you want to explain, pause. Every time you want to apologize, stare. Because dangerous confidence doesn't come from feeling ready. It comes from doing what the inner servant would never dare. You walk faster. You take up space. You stop nodding. You stop softening your tone. You speak like your words are decisions, not suggestions. Confidence isn't a mindset, it's an identity, and that identity is forged in defiance. Not against the world, but against the version of you that still wants to serve. So here's your first rule. If it makes you small, kill it. A thought, a habit, a person, kill it. If it makes you hesitate, confront it. If it makes you weak, deny it. If it tries to be liked, laugh at it. The world will tell you to be kind, polite, and nice. But here's the Machiavellian truth. Nice men are tools. They get used, discarded, replaced. Powerful men aren't nice. They're precise, measured, controlled, calculated. And it starts by slaughtering that little voice inside you that still begs to be accepted. You don't need permission. You don't need validation. You need only one thing, the willingness to become feared, not by others, but by your former self. Because once you kill the servant, the ruler awakens. Powerful men don't arrive loudly. They arrive with presence, not through their voice, but through their silence, their stillness, their stare. You don't need to be known. You don't need to be liked. You just need the atmosphere to shift the moment you enter. That's how a man moves when he owns the room. Not because he's been told he does, but because he behaves like he always has. Machiavelli understood this in the royal courts. The ones who ruled weren't always the kings. Sometimes it was the man in the corner who barely spoke. But when he did, the entire court leaned in. Silence is control. You think talking makes you dominant. It doesn't. It makes you predictable. The quiet man is the threat, because no one knows what he's thinking. When you walk into a room, you don't look for permission. You don't glance around for approval. You observe. You absorb. You let the others rush to prove themselves while you calculate. Your posture speaks before your mouth does. You move slowly, not because you're uncertain, but because you're in no hurry. Predators don't sprint unless it's time to strike. Until then, they wait. Calm, ready. Most people don't even realize how fast they move, how fast they talk, how often they interrupt. because they're trying to impress, because they're still beneath someone else's judgment. But when you walk in like you own the room, you don't speak to impress, you speak to decide. Every sentence carries finality. Every word sounds like a conclusion. People start to listen differently. They don't challenge you. They calibrate themselves to you. And when others speak, you wait. You let them go first. You let them reveal their hunger, their insecurity, their weakness. Because the one who talks first usually gives away what they fear. And once you know that, you can bend them at will. You don't chase energy, you create gravity. Because confidence at this level is not about being liked. It's about making others question their own position just by standing near you. So you carry yourself like you've already won. Not arrogantly, but like someone who doesn't compete, because he's already chosen himself. If they respect you, good. If they don't, better. Because indifference to approval is the final form of power, and if the room wasn't yours when you entered, by the time you leave, they'll remember it like it was, not because you demanded it, but because you didn't have to. Words are not just sounds, they are weapons, and most men speak as if they're asking for permission to exist. You can spot them instantly, the rising tone at the end of every sentence, the nervous laughter, the endless, I think, maybe, I'm not sure, but they speak as if they're apologizing for taking up space. That is not speech. That is self-sabotage. Machiavelli knew the truth. Power is not always in what you say, but how you say it. And when you speak like you cannot be denied, people don't analyze your words. They submit to the weight of your certainty, because here's the game. People are not logical, they're emotional. They don't follow truth, they follow conviction. If you sound sure, they assume you are right. If you hesitate, they assume you're not worth listening to. So what does a Machiavellian voice sound like? It's slow, calm, final. You speak as if your words are not open for debate, as if each sentence is a decree. You speak like someone who already expects to be obeyed. It doesn't matter if you're in a room full of experts. If you sound like a decision, they'll defer. That's the first rule. Sound like the end, not the beginning. And here's what most will never tell you. You don't need to speak often to be respected. In fact, the more you say, the more chances you give others to decode you, challenge you, or worse, stop fearing you. Speak less, mean more. When you do speak, eliminate softness. No filler, no explanations, no apologies. Never say, I'm just saying I could be wrong. I don't know if this makes sense, but those are escape hatches for the weak. Burn them. Say what you mean and leave it there. Let others deal with the silence that follows. Because silence after a strong statement is powerful. It dares people to challenge you, and most won't. Why? Because they're too afraid of what else you might say. Now understand this. The tone of your voice is your true message. The words are the surface, but your tone, your calm, grounded, deliberate tone, tells people exactly where you stand in the hierarchy. You want to rise? Lower your pitch. Slow your tempo. Remove the nervous energy. Sound like someone who has nothing to prove and everything under control. Sound like a man who's already made up his mind and expects the world to catch up. You don't win conversations by being louder. You win them by speaking in a way that makes people feel. Your words aren't suggestions. They're facts. This is how rulers speak, how generals speak, how kings in exile speak before they take their thrones back. And if someone challenges you, never defend, redirect, don't argue, don't explain. Don't justify, just say, I disagree, or better, that's incorrect, and then move on. Because when you refuse to debate, you signal something terrifying, that your reality is not up for negotiation. That's how you control a room without ever raising your voice. Because confidence isn't volume, it's gravity. It's the invisible weight behind your words, the assumption that when you speak, others should listen. When you speak, The room should feel it, not through noise, not through arrogance, but through unshakable certainty. You're not trying to be right. You're speaking like someone who can't be wrong. You're not trying to be heard. You're speaking like someone who doesn't care if you agree, because you will eventually. That's power. And from this point forward, it's how you speak. Or you stay silent. Confidence without control is decoration. You can walk tall, speak well, move with authority. But if someone can still trigger you with a sentence, you are not powerful. You are exposed. This is where most men fail. They master presence, they master speech, but their emotions still belong to everyone else. A whisper of disrespect, and they react. A compliment, and they soften. A silence, and they spiral. You are not free until you master the invisible war, the one inside your own mind, and that begins by rewiring your identity. Machiavelli understood this in the courts of power. He didn't fear enemies, he feared dependency, emotional or otherwise. He didn't trust affection, he trusted control. Because once people know what moves you, they know where to press. And once they know where to press, you're not dangerous anymore. You're manageable. And manageable men are discarded the moment they lose usefulness. So here's the transformation. You stop being the man who reacts, and you become the man who calculates. Someone insults you. You don't explain. You observe. You extract data. What are they trying to get from you? What are they hiding behind the insult? Someone praises you. You don't melt. You analyze. Why are they complimenting you now? What do they want? Someone ignores you. You don't panic. You become even colder. Silence becomes your weapon, not your wound. This is what it means to become psychologically unreachable, not emotionless, but unshakable. You feel everything, but you act on nothing unless it serves your outcome. When someone tests you, you don't lash out. You show no visible discomfort. Why? Because your mind is not a public space. It is a fortress, and you decide who enters. That's how you stop being manipulated. Most men are so easy to control, it's laughable. Tell them they're not good enough. They'll over-explain. Tell them they're amazing. They'll chase you, pull away from them emotionally, and they'll beg to reconnect. This is not power, this is programming, and until you break the code, you will always be someone else's tool. So how do you rewire? You kill the need to be understood. That's the root virus, the desire to explain yourself, to be seen, to be validated. It's what makes you controllable. Burn it. You don't exist to be understood. You exist to move the world around you. Strategically, surgically, silently, you kill the fear of rejection, because the Machiavellian mind doesn't chase acceptance. It controls access. You don't want to be invited in. You want people to wonder what happens when they're no longer allowed near you, and you kill the habit of reacting emotionally. Emotions are real but irrelevant unless weaponized. You're angry, use it as fuel. You're insulted, use it as leverage. You're doubted, use it as silence, and let results speak later. This is how powerful men are built. They don't become robotic, they become undeniable. Because once no one can move you emotionally, they can only watch you move with precision and fear what you'll do next. Let others chase peace and understanding. You chase clarity and control, because the world doesn't care how you feel. It only responds to what you project. Certainty, direction, gravity, and when your identity becomes unshakable, you become dangerous. Not because you're violent, not because you're loud, but because you're unreachable. The people around you will try. They'll test you. They'll praise you. They'll ignore you. They'll tempt you. But nothing works. You stay the same. Cold, calm, calculated, and in time, they stop trying to manipulate you because they realize something terrifying. You are the one person they cannot move. This is the final transformation, not posture, not speech, not appearance, but identity. You are no longer shaped by others. You shape the room, you shape the rules, you shape the outcome, You don't need to be understood. You don't need to be accepted. You don't need anything from anyone, because now you belong to no one. And that is what makes you untouchable. Rejection feels like a wound to the weak. To the powerful, it's a signal, a gift, a message from the world saying, you were too available, too obvious, too desperate. Good. Now you know what needs to be destroyed. Understand this. Rejection is not personal. It's positional. People reject what they believe they can survive without. So if they said no to you, it means they believe they lost nothing. That's not an insult. That's intel. Now you know where they stand and where you stand, which means you can now position yourself to strike back later, when they're weak and you're untouchable. Step 1. Never appear affected. The moment you show pain, they win. It's not even about them. It's about your legend. A Machiavellian mind doesn't panic when the door shuts. It makes the room colder. You weren't rejected. They were disqualified from accessing you. Rejection is only real when you acknowledge it, so you don't react. You evolve. Step 2. Withdraw your presence like a weapon. What happens when something you took for granted disappears? You begin to feel its weight, its value. That's exactly what you do when rejected. Vanish, no explanations, no emotional farewells, just a strategic absence. And while they feel the void, you build. Machiavelli said, men should be either treated generously or destroyed, because they take revenge for slight injuries, but not for ones too severe. So don't hurt them. Make them irrelevant. Make your silence louder than your words. Make them wonder where you went, how far you've gone, and if they ever had access to you at all. Step 3. Reframe the narrative. Rejection only has power if it looks like you were chasing something. So rewrite the story, not for them, but for yourself. You weren't rejected. You selected yourself out of a game too small for you. You allowed them to say no because you were observing their behavior. You gave them one opportunity to prove they had the discernment to recognize power. They failed. And in that failure, they told you everything you needed to know. Now, you vanish and upgrade. Step 4. Convert rejection into control. Here's where you win. Rejection is clarity. Most people live in confusion, not knowing who respects them, who uses them, who fears them. But rejection cuts through that fog like a blade. Now you know who's blind. Now you know where your power has no impact. Yet, so what do? You refine your edge. You sharpen your image. You amplify your value so loudly that the people who once ignored you now have to explain themselves when they speak your name. And the next time they come back, they will. You don't even need to reject them. You've already evolved beyond their reach. That's control. Silent, permanent, elegant. Step 5. Weaponize your comeback. The goal is never revenge. Revenge is emotional. Machiavellian power is always calculated, so you don't try to get back at anyone. You let time handle that for you. You reappear only when your presence creates discomfort, when your success is so visible they can't avoid it, when the person who rejected you is now watching you dominate the very space they thought you didn't belong in. You say nothing. You offer no spite, no sarcasm, no ego. You offer a simple glance, or better, no glance at all. Because now you're not trying to be accepted. You're setting the standard. Final word. Rejection is not defeat. It's the test, the filter, the fire that shows you what needs to be cold, what needs to be cut, and who needs to be left behind. So remember this. You weren't rejected. You were redirected toward a version of yourself that doesn't ask twice, doesn't flinch, and doesn't wait to be chosen. Now go build in silence and return as a force they can't reject. Even if they want to, you've been reshaped, not inspired, not motivated, rebuilt. From the inside out, you killed self-doubt, not with affirmations, but with action. You didn't wait to feel ready. You moved, You acted, and you learned that power doesn't belong to the perfect, it belongs to the bold. You took rejection and turned it into fuel, no more chasing approval. Now you let people feel the cost of losing you. You became scarce, strategic, silent, and they noticed. You stopped entering rooms to be accepted. Now you own them through presence, posture, and precision. You no longer speak to be heard. You speak as if no one can afford to disagree. And above all, you rewired your identity. You're no longer predictable. You're no longer easily moved. You've become unreachable, emotionally untouchable. They can't provoke you. They can't tempt you. They can't shake you because you belong to no one now, and that makes you unforgettable. That's what creates a legend. Not noise, not fame, powerful silence, cold clarity, ruthless consistency. You don't need to announce your transformation. They'll feel it in your walk, in your tone, in your absence. You've become the man people observe quietly, the one who used to chase, now being chased, the one who used to ask, now deciding, the one who no longer needs approval because he became the standard. So no, this wasn't just about confidence. This was about dominance, mental, emotional, psychological. You are not here to fit in. You are here to move the pieces, to bend the room, to haunt their memory, even in silence. Because legends don't beg, they don't explain, they exist, and the world reshapes around them. Final command. Like this video if you're done chasing. Subscribe if you're ready to become the kind of man they can't control, can't predict, and can never forget. Because this isn't self-help, this is war, and you just became a weapon.